Well, colleagues, good morning. Thank you for joining our session 5, Leadership Roles in Adaptive Evaluation. We're here with, okay, let me mute. Jordi, can you mute? Okay. And I'm joined here again with Joseph Cole and Jordi Delbaz. If you want to say.
Hi.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Hello.
who have delivered all the other adaptive evaluation sessions. Okay, as you know, colleagues, we're now finalizing phase 2, which is delivering the technical sessions on specific approaches for adaptive evaluation. This is session 5, so we have one more session coming up in April. So I will send that email for session 6, which will be the last session on adaptive approaches. All the sessions are available for the recording is available, and the slides on the you just posted, right, Jordi?
Yes, is in the chat. Yeah,
it's in the chat, the link. So you, if you missed one of them, you can go back and look at them. And for phase 3, we're hoping some of the country offices are interested in rolling out some of the methods for adaptive evaluation, so we can support you, accompany you in the rollout to conduct this type of exercises. So yeah, Jordi and Joseph, if you want to start.
okay, thanks so much, Valeria. So welcome everyone, thanks so much for joining. The agenda for today's session, we will review a bit the context for those of you that have not attended past sessions, and those of you that have, this as a refresher. And then we will touch upon 3 topics today. One is leading on emergence, so how we take leadership roles when it comes to emergence. And emergence, as we have seen in other pills, is very much related with adaptive evaluation. Emergence is when things change during an evaluation, how we can take the lead as evaluation managers. We will also look at a very interesting technique that it's called the boundary critique. It's a technique used in systems thinking and in the evaluation of complex intervention that has a lot to do also with taking leading roles in evaluation. And then finally, we will do a module on facilitation in evaluation, also related to the leading role that you take in making sure that there is user engagement. And we will finalize with the wrap-up and steps. As you know, this is all part of the Compass, the UNFPA adaptive management model. So these courses or these sessions, the capacity development and adaptive evaluation, is linked to the Compass that has been adopted by UNFPA, and it's part of the strategic plan. So you are operationalizing now the model. Here you have a refresher definition of what is adaptive management and then adaptive evaluation. Just for you to remember here, the key point is that adaptive evaluation is suited to adaptive management. So when an organization moves into managing adaptively, you need a type of evaluation that is not so much sequential and that comes at the end and just for accountability, but you need a type of evaluation that provides input and learning for adaptation much often, and that's what adaptive evaluation is in this context. So it's a type of evaluation methods and tools that prioritize adaptability, learning, and above all, evaluation of interventions in complex environments. And this is the setting in which we are. This is what we have seen so far. You have all these pills, adaptive evaluation pills, we have called them, in a Google Drive. The Google Drive is in the chat, so you just have to double-click the link that you have in the chat, and you will see all the different folders with pill 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pill 5 as well, which is the one that we will see today. We started already a few months ago with methods to foster evaluation use. This is something that you prioritized last year in a session, informative session we did in July. We sent you a questionnaire and you told us that you were very much interested in that part. We started there. Then we went on to methods for learning and adaptation in real time. We touch upon real-time evaluations, real-time learning, and developmental evaluations, as well with practical techniques like adaptive inquiry frameworks. that are very much used in developmental evaluation. Then we did a full session on methods to capture complexity. We talked about what complexity is in interventions and how complex the interventions that you evaluate are. And then we talk about creative tensions, causal feedback loops, and iceberg models, which are tools from systems thinking that are applied in evaluations of complex interventions. And the last one we did prior to this one was methods to capture contribution in unpredictable environments. And we talked about strategy testing and outcome harvesting. We had in that PIL the participation of Myanmar country office, because they are applying, actually, they have already applied outcome harvesting to third-party monitoring in the country, and they explained us their experience. Today, what we will see, so far in these 4 modules, we have seen a lot of methods, a lot of approaches, methods, procedures, ways of working. And in this session and the next session, these PILs 5 and 6, we will go into our software, right? Into more attitudinal aspects of evaluation managers and evaluations. Because adaptive evaluation is a way of conducting evaluations, but it's also a way of working, a procedural way, but it's also a way of thinking. And mostly it's a way of thinking. And this is what we will start to look at today. And then we will continue in PIL number 6. So today the focus will be on the leadership roles that you should adopt in adaptive evaluation. Adaptive evaluation, it's very much linked with leadership. And here we're not talking about management, but about leadership, about taking a leading role in conducting the evaluation. In order to unpack this, we will first talk on leading, on emergence, then boundary critique, and then facilitation. So Joseph, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Jordi, and hello, everyone. So we're going to start with exploring what leadership means in the context of emergence. Jordi said leadership is actually not a specific function of senior management. We are talking about leadership as the leading role we all can adopt. So we depart from the premise that everyone is a leader, and everyone can adopt a certain level of agency. Agency meaning our ability to act. When in the context of emergence, which is a very important concept in adaptation, in adaptive management, emergence means being able to identify what change is emerging, being new information, new changes in context, as it was the COVID, and based on that, how can we actually act based on what happened, how we can adopt a proactive role, actually, based on what we identified as change. Next, Jordi. So you know that, and here we go to the A-Compass. The A-Compass is the adaptive management model at UNFPA. So what do we mean by leadership? We can go to the A-Compass and see that the A-Compass has 4 drivers of adaptation, and leadership is the first one. So this is actually the 4 drivers of adaptation are an indication of what we can call a theory of change of adaptive management in the organization. So adaptation starts with leadership. It is one of these 4 drivers. And then when there's a notion of leadership, when we really touch upon our capacity to act based on the changes we see, then we may collaborate in teams in order to discuss the findings, the data we get, the changes we see, and then organize in agile teams in order to work on sprints, prioritizing which actions are we going to take. And based on this experimentation, we may monitor and evaluate the learning process, and therefore make the decisions that allow us to actually adapt. So these are the 4 drivers of adaptation, critical processes that help the organization, especially people and teams. You know that the A-Compass is people-centered. It starts with the A teams. Navigate and adapt in turbulent and unpredictable contexts. So complexity, as we actually emphasized in the last PIL, in one of the last PILs, is a very important concept, and it actually frames the context in which adaptation happens. Next, Jordi. So here we have the adaptation manifesto, which is actually a manifesto that showcases that theory of change that is implicit in adaptive management with these 4 drivers of adaptation. So, and it says that if we are able to lead, then we can really collaborate more effectively. if we can collaborate more effectively, if we actually feel safe to engage in collaboration, with our colleagues in our teams, then we can be agile in delivering our value. And when we are agile, we really can learn from, the implementation of the tasks we are doing. And then we can adapt and make the decisions that may allow us to adapt to those unexpected changes we may see in the context, or also coming from information that we may get out of our monitoring and evaluation approaches. So it's very important here, this kind of leadership. There's no evaluation handbook or any handbook or any guidelines that will predict what will happen in the future, as we all saw with the COVID. So that's why it's important when working in this driver, in the leadership, to work to develop that mindset and the behavior so that it allows us, to really be more proactive in trying to anticipate or at least foresee some changes happening. One of the latest developments in this regard in UNFPA has been the foresight, the development of these 4 scenarios, which are actually 4 stories about the future that allow the organization to identify potential pathways of action depending on which future or which scenario is likely to emerge. So based on that, in order to develop that mindset and behavior, the leadership work is more on principles rather than norms. So one of the principles is actually connecting with the fact that everyone is a leader, that we all actually can exercise, have the ability to act in our own frame of responsibilities. Also that we take our work with an open mind, so we may envision, share, and build a sense of purpose that engages people in our teams. So this is also important. Next, Jordi. So we also can exercise our leadership by empowering and supporting others, in order to self-organize and self-manage our own teams towards the organizational goals we have, and taking always the people's capacities and potential into account. It's very important also when we exercise this type of leadership to be flexible and humble, so that we are more prone to be ready to change. So we work on this change readiness, and also that we have an attitude to go and explore new ways of working, new options to do, so that we can actually embrace change and not resist to change. So that adaptive leadership really promotes taking this proactive role towards action at all levels of staff responsibility. So we can actually ground this into the level of responsibility we have, for example, as M&E officers. And then the last point would be also be rigorous. Be rigorous is a principle also of adaptive leadership in using evidence and results-based findings and thorough information, in a way that we can engage with a different perspective involved in our teams and with our partners in designing in design events, and also in places where we can interpret, discuss findings, and therefore make decisions. Next, Jordi, and here Jordi will introduce precisely what is the connection between leadership in also in evaluation.
Yes, actually, you have in the A compass, in the adaptive management model of UNFPA, for each one of the drivers that Joseph has explained, leadership, collaboration, agility, and learning, you have these tables like here, in which you have a number of self-reflective questions that you can ask yourself when you are applying or activating each one of these drivers in your office, and it's classified by a phase within the program cycle. So here what you have is, what we have highlighted is the questions, the self-reflective questions for the work team when it comes to evaluation, to applying leadership to evaluation. And what the model considers is that the first thing that we should have into account is to what extent are we a staff dealing with evaluation managers, M&E focal points are having a proactive role in the design and the conduct of the evaluation. So here, when we're talking about leadership, a very important component of leadership is ownership, and then it's proactive attitude. So is the staff involved in the evaluation taking the lead in designing and conducting the evaluation, or is having the contrary, would be having a passive role? And adaptive evaluation needs that, because as we will see, and well, we have seen already in past bills, adaptive evaluation happens in a context of emergence. Many things happen that we didn't expect. Therefore, if we don't take a proactive role, a proactive attitude, we miss opportunities, and we might be doing business as usual, following a plan that doesn't lead to anything that we want, or maybe leads to evaluations not being used. So proactive role, this is one of the first things that we should ask ourselves. And the second one is whether evaluations are led by evaluation managers, by people in the office, in a way that makes staff feel open to sharing concerns, feedback, and ideas, seeing mistake as part of a continuous learning process. And this is very important. This is the psychological safety. You have a tool, as Joseph will summarize at the end of this presentation, where you have a number of tools that work on this in the toolkit that is inside of the A Compass. And there is a number of tools that look at that. How do you ensure in a meeting that there is psychological safety? Because you might take a lead, you might be very proactive, but if there's not an environment of trust that makes staff feel, comfortable to share ideas and talk about mistakes in a way that they end up being insights, learning doesn't happen. We might call it learning, but that's not real learning. So this part, taking a leadership role in adaptive evaluations, is of the essence. Another point here that we think is very important, why leadership is important in adaptive evaluation, is because adaptive evaluation, as we said at the beginning, is part of adaptive management. And adaptive management essentially means that you change, learn, and adjust the program in a complex context and a changing context. And when it comes to the evaluation, you also change and adapt the evaluation to the situation. Yeah, we saw examples in real-time evaluations, in developmental evaluations, as while you're doing the evaluation, maybe stakeholders change, maybe the context change, maybe evaluation questions change. There will be changes, and we have to adapt to those changes. Now, you do not adapt if you do not have leadership, if you cannot lead that process of adaptation. So that's why we understand leadership is absolutely of the essence. So the leadership by monitoring and evaluation functions in adaptive management is fundamental. It doesn't work if there's no leadership, essentially. That's the way. You might follow the steps of a developmental evaluation, you might follow the steps of a real-time evaluation. If there's no leadership by M&E staff, then you follow the steps, but you end up not being able to adapt. So actually, this is very important, that leadership is what enables you to address emergence. So emergence means that there are new changes in the context while you are evaluating. If there's no leadership, if there's no proactiveness and there's no ownership, and you don't take the lead, you will not be able to adapt the evaluation to those changes. So, and we need to adapt to emergence, otherwise the evaluation ends up being not relevant, meaningful, and timely. Above all, here, it's in the context of complex environments in which everything changed, as we saw in pills 3 and 4. Okay, so here the main message is, there is a need to be proactive, anticipatory, and take a leadership. Proactive meaning you take action, before orders are given. You are able to be anticipatory, you see it coming, you see signals of change, and then propose, take the lead, and make those changes and those adaptations. In this light, essentially what we would like to emphasize is that adaptive management and adaptive evaluation are a number of working methods, which is the ones that we have seen. So we can apply, when you look at the adaptive management model, you will see that there is a number of steps and procedures that you can follow. Adaptive moments, for example, are one of the steps that enable you to be able to see changes coming and then adapt to the new situation. But that's the working method. An adaptive moment has a number of phases and of steps, of stages, but that's the process. What is very important for this to work is to have the mindset also, the attitude, because only with the procedures, it will not work. And here we have taken out the concept of an adaptive mindset developed by Michael Quinn-Patton. As we know, he has worked in UNFPA. He's a 50-year-old experienced evaluator that has worked a lot in complex systems. And when he refers to the mindset and the attitude for evaluations to be adaptive, he talks about these being active, reactive, interactive, and then you can be adaptive. So you have to be active, you have to take a proactive role, you have to react to signals of change that happen in emergence. You have to be interactive, which means that you have to be facilitating the process and dealing with all the stakeholders that take place in the evaluation. And then you can be adaptive. You can take actions to adapt to the situation. You have in the Google Drive, in the folder for this pill number 5, you have a flashcard, which is a one-pager with all these active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive attitudes, and then a number of examples there that can inspire you unpacking these concepts. Yeah, there is a flashcard, so you just double-click into the link that you will see in the chat, that will lead you to the Google Drive. You go to pill 5, the folder on slides, and there you will see these slides, and also you will see these flashcards if you want to deepen your understanding of how to be active, reactive, interactive, and also adaptive. Okay, here we have a bit of an example of what it means, being active, being reactive, being interactive, and then being adaptive. But then in that flashcard, you have you have it fully unpacked. So actually, this mindset on how to lead emergence in evaluations and its adaptive mindset have to do with the 4 drivers of adaptation. As you can see here, when we talk about being interactive, that has to be with collaboration. Being reactive, that has to do with agility. Yeah, and then this being active has to do with leadership. This is very much related to the whole spirit of the A compass. And it's also linked with facilitation in evaluation. In order to be interacting with others and being active and reactive, you have to facilitate this process. The evaluation manager and even the external evaluators that you might have hired for that evaluation should be facilitating the evaluation. Evaluation is not anymore just about gathering data, collecting data, crunching numbers, figures, and then presenting them. It's about facilitating a process, and we will talk in the 3rd submodule today about facilitation. Okay, you also have, this is just to refresh, you have the right mindset, and then the process in order to adapt, it's the adaptive moment in the A compass. So you use adaptive moments in order to adapt, but you go through these adaptive moments with an adaptive mindset. So you are active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive throughout the adaptive moment. If you go through this adaptive moment, in the old way, just waiting for orders to be given and just, timing out, asking the questions, and then adapting, it doesn't really work, because an adaptive moment, it's all about seeing those emerging risks and emerging opportunities coming up and catching them at the right time. And sometimes those that see those opportunities, those signals of change, have to take on the floor and present them on the table. So you cannot wait. You have to take that leadership role in order to do that. And when you ask these triggering questions, they have to be a safe environment in which everybody is comfortable and ready to have a genuine and honest discussion about what is happening, what are the implications, and what we could do about it. So all this goes together. The mindset and the adaptive moments and the process, that goes together. If we don't apply that together, we think that this is it will not work. Now we wanted to have a bit of a discussion with you and a few a bit of a conversation. So we thought of breaking you in breakout rooms, in groups, and work on this question. The question is, what can you do today, right now, to make evaluations more responsive to things that emerge? Yeah, we know that the traditional way, which is still valid, but not in all type of evaluations, the traditional way is you have a plan, you have a roadmap for the evaluation with a number of stages, and you follow that plan, you manage a contract, and you end up with a report. But in an adaptive evaluation, many things might change. Okay, so what could you do? And this "you" is in capital letters, because we're thinking here in terms of your leading role. What could you do? Yeah, what things that show that you could be more proactive, more reactive, could you do to make sure that evaluations are more responsive to emergence? Yeah. Here the idea is that you reflect on things that you could already do. If you think about things that you could do, but you cannot because the conditions are not in place, that would also be very interesting to reflect upon. Okay, so let me see. So this is the question. What can you do to make evaluations more responsive to things that change, more adaptive? And now we will break you in rooms of, how many participants?
So maybe 2 rooms, no, Jordi?
We did 2 rooms, okay, perfect, okay. So we will, and we will spend for this 10 minutes, and then we will call you back to the plenary, and then we have this discussion, all of us together. Okay, so I'm assigning you to the rooms. You just have to click join and then start the discussion. And we meet in 10 minutes. Dea and Visare. Are you here? Could you join or not?
Beside there, can you join the breakout room? No sé si están aquí, maestra. També s'han connectat, no? No et sento. Crec que no et sento, mestre, estàs mutejat.
Sí, és que no puc fer-lo del breakout room i desmutejar-me alhora. Que dic, parem el recording?
Sí.
Ens en recordarem d'endollar-lo.
Sí, crec que sí. All right, so thank you everyone, welcome back. I hope you had a very interesting discussion, and we would like to hear your thoughts. So we can have a plenary, okay, with commenting. It may be, of course, we don't expect any conclusion, but it may be, some of your reflections, thoughts, doubts. So the idea is to start a conversation on your margins of maneuver, right? What you can do to make evaluations more responsive to changes. So you were 2 groups with 3 people in each one. We would like to hear your group. So I don't know, since we are here with you, Tesh, I don't know if you like to start with your group, Tesh and Lucas or Hong, if you like to share your main insights.
Yes, from our group, Lucas will present. Please, Lucas.
Okay, yes, thank you, Jody. Our group was myself, Tej and Hong, where we were looking at what we could do, because maybe for now we're saying these situations were likely that they haven't actually happened. But we are saying in the event they happen, we will have to actually have short-term adaptive evaluation tools that can actually be used to collect the data. But we also need to be flexible and quick in terms of the processes of coordinating the whole process, so that we are able to coordinate the process of evaluation as also facilitating the teams that are involved. So the leadership part in terms of us is making sure that we follow, or we also coordinate, we also lead the process in consultation and in collaboration with the stakeholders, the evaluation office, the evaluation team, as also the programs that are involved, so that we get data that can be usable. We also need to always remain prepared, because it's important to be prepared ahead of such, so that you can always deliver the results as expected. So I think that's the adaptive evaluation that we are thinking of, as we need to be reactive, active, as well as also effective in terms of what we're doing. Thank you, and over to you. I think maybe my colleagues, if there is anything more they would want, they can also add. Jody and Tej, anything that I'm leaving?
No, I think you covered very well the points. So thanks, Lucas.
Okay, thanks. Over to you, Jody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lucas. Well, you mentioned a very interesting thing, which is about, having those short-term adaptive evaluation tools to collect data. Were you thinking about any particular tool in this regard, Lucas and Tim?
Oh, yes, maybe I can start them. In terms of the emergencies, you always look at what is the biggest impact that you want to evaluate, so that you can actually intervene. So instead of looking at all the criteria that we normally follow in a full evaluation, maybe you can look at the most pressing one in agreement with the teams that are doing the project, so that you can actually say, what is the thing that you want to find out in evidence on, so that we can now go and intervene accordingly. So that's how we are looking at it in terms of the shortness and how quickly can we get that data.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Lucas. Very clear. Let's now move to the other group. Ahmed, Lovina, Saima. What are your main thoughts and reflections or insights you'd like to share?
Okay, as you mentioned, our team was Saima, Lovina, and Ahmed. We thought about two scenarios. The first one, it's more related how we can react to stakeholders' feedback. We have an example of inception report prepared and be ready to be presented to stakeholders. And if we couldn't take on our consideration their feedback and how they react to what we present, we might lose their support or their cooperation. The second one was the same or close to what the first team mentioned about country program evaluation. So instead of waiting for at the end of the program to carry out the evaluation or also the midterm evaluation, we thought also to make a smaller version of evaluation. It can be for the whole office, or what we thought it might be also a good idea is doing by theme. So I have 3 or 4 or 5 themes or programs, evaluation for each one. So it will make it much easier. It will take less time. It will give us a feedback of what we are doing. Are we on track or not? What we need to change or adapt or to improve while we are still have time to before the end of the program. So these are two scenarios we have.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for sharing. One question, it's very interesting what you just mentioned. When or where or in which kind of evaluations do you see more fit for introducing these kind of spaces?
I believe it's for me it's better to do it by theme, to concentrate of what we are doing or what we achieved after 2 years, for instance, what is the reaction of our beneficiaries, especially on what we are providing to them, what we are implementing, how they see our interventions, what do we need to learn from their feedback, what do we need to improve, is what we providing to them is enough, or what they have based on, we have in a constant change in the world now. Is there a new needs we need to reflect or to cover or to put in our consideration in the coming phases or coming plan? Yeah.
Actually, Ahmed, if I may, so now the way, let me see if I understand, the way it works now is that these themes are usually evaluated in the framework of a country program evaluation, right? Which is a much broader evaluation. So maybe the treatment, the approach to these themes is a bit thinner. So your idea would be to go more, to do intermediate type of smaller evaluations to assess the themes. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So that
right.
would be an initiative of the office. So would be the office that would conduct those evaluations by theme.
Yes, that's what also we thought it's good to be in.
That's very interesting.
In-house process, because we need it. Also, we try to make it as simple as possible.
Yes.
To get as much as possible information, and also not to take a long time.
Yes. Yeah. Valeria, do you have any thoughts or any reflections on this?
And may I have a question?
Oh yes, Hong, how are you?
Yeah,
okay. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. And I'm wondering about the data collection in the emergency situation. So I'm thinking about quick and dirty method to collect data. So can we take a photo, take a video, and very quick interview or something like that? Because in that situation, it's not easy to collect, and we may not care about sampling method. We don't care about we may care about how to quick get the information, real situation, to analyze, to get the conclusion. So can we do that or not?
Okay. Yeah. Well, if I may, this is done exactly the way you have described. Yeah. I don't know to what extent it's quick and dirty. The thing is that it's quick for sure. But yes, real-time evaluations. We had a module number 2, in which we talked about real-time evaluations. And in humanitarian situations, the important thing is to make the decision. First of all, to know what is happening and to react fast. So then there is a tension between the depth of the evaluation and the quickness, the fastness, in which you need to have some heuristic, some information in order to make the decision. And and we saw a few examples, and yes, in emergency situations, this is absolutely acceptable. So pictures, videos, and the thing is that there is still some implicit design. Yeah, you just don't go. So you have to justify that this decision is taken on the basis of having at least an illustrative sample. You might not have to do, very quick sampling, but at least that it's not based, your decision is not based only in one particular subgroup of your target group, but that you have, but yes, the type of data collection is much faster, and the turnarounds, we're talking about 15 days sometimes, 1 week, 15 days, and then you make the decision. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, Emma.
Okay, sorry to take you back on module 2. I think I missed that one, so I need to understand now. In the real-time evaluations, does one have to design an insertion report, or you just have to already just do it without planning for it? Just need to understand.
Yes, yeah, there are inception reports, but the inception reports, they're more like concept notes, approach notes. So everything is much faster, everything is much leaner. LEAN. So it's not so, it is, so the process of the design of the evaluation is similar. There's still inception reports when you see examples of real-time evaluations by UNHCR, but the process is slimmer. But yes, you do have, because you have to inform, it's a matter of accountability of what are your plans, what are you going to do? You know that there will be a lot of emergence. There is a lot of emergence in emergency evaluations, of course, and you know that, but there is also a bit of a design report and an inception report. The thing is that it doesn't take 3 months. Yeah, it takes a week or 10 days in order to produce. So it's the process is faster.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Go back to you have it in the Google Drive. You have all the materials there with all the examples of real-time evaluations that we presented. And if you have any question after you have gone through the materials, just let us know.
Thank you so much, Jody.
Okay, so Joseph and Valeria, would you like to mention anything on, this theme, the possibility of doing theme evaluations that Ahmed was mentioning, because the CPE, it's, it's too large in terms of evaluation and not very regular in time, or we might go.
Yes, we are reviewing the handbook, and in general, we're now going to think about more nimble and more real-time exercises. So that's what we're doing right now. We are thinking and reviewing the methodology. But again, we can think of other exercises that countries might want to pilot with new approaches. So not necessarily undertake a CPE. So we're very open to pilot any type of exercise, and we roll out a new, more adaptive, more real-time type of approach. So that would be very useful if any country office wants to undertake this, and we can support.
Thanks so much, Valeria. Giuseppe, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Jordi. So thank you. Maybe we can move now. Thank you for very interesting discussions, because one of the things we always navigate, right, is about how we exercise our leadership role. Do we have to wait, until we get instructions on when and where and how to act? Or whenever we see some things emerging, or a need to, for example, introducing those short cycles for reflection and learning, these timely feedback loops, or, for example, on to what extent we have to include a design, in evaluations in emergency situations. All those are things that we can actually act upon. We have here some margin of maneuver, and then we may reflect upon something which is interesting, which is the boundaries. So what is limiting somehow our space for decision making, right? So do we have processes or procedures that actually are not prone to include those small tweaks that may allow us to be more adaptive? So an important actually approach that we'd like to discuss now is boundary critique, in order to precisely reflect upon how decisions are made. And a boundary critique is actually, it's quite a new approach. So here we are introducing a state-of-the-art approach when we are talking about systems thinking and evaluation. So it's an approach, a concept that comes from systems science. It's actually called critical systems heuristics. And this is a tool, an approach out of this field. And why we consider that boundary critique is important in adaptive evaluations, mainly for two things. The first reason would be because adaptive evaluation happen in complex systems. So you know that, and actually we had a pill where we dealt with complexity, we defined complexity, and we defined how to evaluate complexity. And boundary critique actually helps understand the evaluation as a system. And when we try to understand the evaluation of a system, we saw that we apply 3 system concepts. We engage into multiple perspectives. We explore the interrelationships between the factors that may explain the meritocracy, the merit of a program, which is what we do in evaluation. And also the third one, we reflect upon the boundaries that actually explain the limitations about what we can do, what we can include in the evaluation, and who also do we include as part of the evaluation. Next, Jordi. And the second reason is because adaptive evaluation requires capturing an emergence, right? And adapting to the changes we see, that we actually see emerging. And in order to do that, we need to understand how decisions are made on these changes. And boundary critique may help us really understand this. So here you have the conceptual definition of what boundary critique is, now that we know why we decided to introduce this concept in adaptive evaluation PIL. So it's that concept. You have here the sources. It was elaborated by Werner Ulrich in 2002. And it states that both the meaning and the validity of any professional proposition, and we work with propositions when we design programs, when we design evaluations, always depend on boundary judgments as to what we observe, what are the facts we deal with. In evaluation, we may collect data, we may observe certain facts, certain findings, and then how we interpret, what do we make out of those facts? How do we interpret this data? How do we interpret the evidence we get? So those are the norms, the evaluation standards through which we assess, the data we get, and what we consider relevant or not. So these are the two particular things we constantly do, even implicitly in evaluation. So we explore the facts and how we understand, how interpret those facts, and then therefore how we make decisions out of those facts. So adaptive evaluation really require engaging with multiple perspectives. We may have the same facts, but different perspective around the facts, different ways to understand, to read the evidence we may provide. And we need to assess the interdependence between these different perspectives in which we engage, because they may come from different stakeholders. And those are two fundamental concepts in systems thinking. Next, Jordi. So boundary critique really examines the assumptions whereby decisions are made. For example, we may use a theory of change to evaluate a program. So boundary critique may help us, for example, to test, to examine those assumptions ingrained in a theory of change. It basically, overall, it critically reviews questions such as, how can those participating in evaluation effectively reflect on their own assumptions? And they can be about setting boundaries on problems, solutions, measures of success, knowledge claims, and other aspects of the evaluation. We will see now an inquiry framework whereby we can assess those things. And the second question is, how can examination of assumptions actually about boundaries be employed as an emancipatory practice? So that means that how can we make those evaluations more inclusive, more participatory, that can really allow to expand the scope and the outreach so that they can engage with the beneficiaries and with the stakeholders in general in the evaluation. Next, Jordi. So why we think this is important in adaptive evaluation? Because, well, boundaries really influence what evidence and values are considered relevant or not. So, for example, what criteria do we use in evaluation? And criteria always emerge from boundary choices we make. What do we assess in evaluation? We consider the effectiveness, the efficiency of the program, of what we are evaluating. What is efficiency to us? How does effectiveness look like, for example? So those are criteria that emerge from certain value and therefore boundary choices. Also, boundaries compel us to look critically at who or what may be excluded. And this is an important thing. We have to make choices. Sometimes we consider who are the direct stakeholders, so we consider who will be included and therefore who will be excluded. And also what are we gonna actually, which contents, what evaluation questions, what inquiry framework will guide the evaluation data collection process. And so by deciding what we include, we actually also exclude different things. So with that may allow us, when we have this critical analysis, what also potential unintended consequences may we encounter if we exclude certain people or stakeholders and certain topics in the evaluation. Not examining boundaries also poses risks for these unintended consequences as a result. And critiquing boundaries is actually also a way to enact ethical responsibility, because we may explore, right, the different perspectives that we include, the ones that are not included, and who is becoming engaged and who is becoming actually excluded. So it also is a way to ethically reflect upon the responsibility we have as evaluators to be as much inclusive as possible. And it's also important to actually have in mind that there are no right boundaries or experts in boundary setting. It's just the boundary critique is a process of reflection, of critical reflection and deliberations, you know, in order that they are intended to make us more responsible about the issue in which we are dealing with. So in making evaluations more inclusive, engaged, and participatory with the system we are trying to evaluate.
Yeah, if I may here, Joseph, this is incredibly related to the LNOB, the leave no one behind. So how can evaluations make sure that you have made an assessment to leave no one behind in the framework of the evaluation? Boundary critique would help you answer that question. So it's not only used for that question, but it can help you answer that question. I just say that because we know that in UNICEF and also in other agencies, and as well as in UNFPA, leave no one behind, it's permeating, of course, every single part of the program cycle and evaluations as well. So boundary critique would enable you to provide an evidence-based answer to that particular question.
Thank you, Jordi. So while in adaptive evaluation, you know, the boundary critique may allow you to capture some emerging changes, no? Because some decision makers, for example, may change, and some stakeholders may be included during the evaluation, but also it may help us to identify, you know, the sources of changes in the sources of motivation, control, knowledge, and legitimacy. And for example, here you have a rich picture in which in evaluations, we always start with a stakeholder mapping or of who is going to be involved in the evaluation. And then we also might consider who is going to be affected by the evaluation. So who is affected by the program that we are evaluating. And sometimes this may overlap, sometimes not. And those are the issues we're trying to evaluate. And a boundary critique may help us understand what are the values and the interest of those people involved and the ones that are not involved. So to put you in an example, when Jordi and I and Valeria, we started the developmental evaluation of the results-based management system in the UN, and we had the terms of reference, the main focus, to start inquiring, the main stakeholder was actually based on the headquarters. So we analyzed and we actually had a lot of interviews with different business units that were related, you know, into the way RBM is actually implemented at the headquarters level, mostly. And then when we started the scoping phase, we discovered that actually we found a lot of evidence that the field also had a lot of things to say about RBM, because actually the data sources mainly are coming from country offices and then regional offices. So we were exploring that boundary because those going to the field was not included at the beginning of the evaluation. Then Jordi, Valeria, and I discussed, actually, we reflected upon that boundary. We brought that into an action group meeting with those stakeholders that were involved at the beginning, but then we saw that there were more stakeholders to be involved and that others were affected. So based on that meeting, then we decided to enlarge the scope of the evaluation, and therefore we went to the field and we incorporated a lot of field data collection and analysis based on that boundary critique we did in a particular moment of that evaluation. So it's a tool that you may actually include as a way to exercise your leadership. So you don't need this tool to be included in the handbook in order to use it. You may use it in any particular moment. You may find it relevant for the sake of the evaluation. So here you have what is how to apply boundary critique, and it's basically an inquiry framework. So you are really used to this type of frameworks. And you can see that it's a set of 12 questions, and there are 4 types of questions. What you mainly analyze is first the sources of motivation. So, and you can see here that the questions are formulated in how is the evaluation actually designed. So who is the intended beneficiary of the evaluation, and also who should be the intended beneficiary of the evaluation, because sometimes that may help us in identifying gaps in the evaluation. And this is actually a tool we can use when we design an evaluation. No, and you mentioned before, actually the importance of designing, of using this kind of adaptive evaluation approaches in the design. So it may help us actually identify those sources of motivation. What is the purpose? What should be the purpose? And also, what is the measure of success? How are we going to measure the merit of the program? And how this should be also measured or improvement. Then we have sources of control. Who is the decision maker? Who is in control of the conditions of success in that evaluation? And who should be, if there is any gap here? What also resources or conditions of success are to be under the control of the evaluation's decision maker? And here is important, for example, when we actually design an evaluation reference group, who is going to be there, who are the decision makers. So these questions can really help us when we conduct this type of exercise. What conditions of success are to be outside the control of the decision maker or the decision environment? And that might also help us identify any issues that go beyond that circle of control or influence. The third aspect or sources that we also explore in boundary critique are the sources of knowledge. And that's also a very important one for you, because as M&E officers, what you always would like, you always want to bring the best expertise possible. So what are the experts, that will provide the relevant knowledge and skills in that evaluation, and who they should be? So we can also here identify some gaps. What are the relevant expertise, knowledge, and skills or competencies that we are looking for the operation, for the implementation of that evaluation? And what are also the assurances of successful implementation of the evaluation or the warrantor? And finally, we go to reflect upon the sources of legitimacy. So, and here we ask questions like, who is to be the witness, representing the interest of those that are negatively affected, and not involved by the evaluation? What are the ones or the opportunities for emancipation? If we include, for example, people that were not initially included, would that also provide an opportunity for the evaluation to learn, about new approaches? In that case, that could be linked to the LNOB aspect that Jordi was mentioning. So actually, boundary critique is used a lot for marginalization. And the last question would be, what space is to be available for reconciling different worldviews regarding the evaluation among those affected and involved? So we might find actually different worldviews sometimes colliding and sometimes conflicting around how we see what we are doing in an evaluation, some findings we are getting about those that are involved and those that are affected. So that would be like an inquiry framework that is designed to outline and provoke thought about boundary judgments. We may use all those questions. We may pick some of the questions that may consider relevant. So of course, this is just an inquiry framework that is a departure point, and then we may adapt it and make it useful in order to design the evaluation. And we may use the inquiry framework also to review, throughout the evaluation, how the boundary choices that are made, during the process of the evaluation. So that's why we make this quite relevant in the domain, in the field of adaptive evaluation. Well, you have here an example that you can check. There's the direct link here. It was actually in an evaluation that happened in Botswana. They were evaluating natural resource management, and they used actually this inquiry framework, the boundary critique, They first, one of the things we may be used to do stakeholder mapping. Stakeholder mapping and boundary critique, they are two tools that go hand in hand. So actually conducting a stakeholder mapping, it should be a prerequisite before conducting the boundary critique, or in other words, before conducting a boundary critique would be interesting to have a stakeholder map of those stakeholders involved or included or affected in an evaluation. So in that case, they identified 4 stakeholders. And one of the things we do in boundary critique is assessing the role they normally had in the program or in the project. Next, Jordi. So here you have an example of, you have on your left side the inquiry framework you saw with the questions, and in the right side you have a table that you can actually check and see in that article, in the reference of Michael Reynolds in Evaluation Based on Critical Systems Heuristics. And you can see here how they assess the different sources of influence. You have in your left a column, motivation, control, expertise, and legitimacy. And based on the role of each stakeholder, you can see an analysis of the role, the specific concerns they had on the different sources, and also the key problems they found. And they allowed the evaluation to identify key questions that they would like to explore, and therefore later investigate and provide data according to that. And then based on those findings, analyze what the findings meant for the evaluation and how these evaluation could be more meaningful to those stakeholders involved and affected, depending on the changes they saw during the evaluation. That's one example that you can check here. So we would like now, Jordi, if you'd like to add some of your reflections or comments. The idea is also that we have now a space. We have here an open question for you. In an evaluation, when and where would you apply this kind of tool, the boundary critique, as an inquiry framework? And here we would like to open up an open discussion among all of you and us. Jordi, over to you.
Yeah. So the floor is open. Any opinions? How did it resonate with you, the boundary critique, and answering the question? Do you think that it could be interesting to apply it in an evaluation? What type of evaluation are you visualizing or thinking about? And in what part of the evaluation would you apply it? Right at the beginning, at the design, prior to data collection, maybe after data collection, during analysis? Yeah, the floor is yours. Any ideas and discussion will be welcome. You just unmute yourself or put on the camera, or even without camera, and then we talk about this.
Yes, thank you so much, Jody and Joseph. I think this is very helpful, and it's very useful because, like you were highlighting, that the principle of leaving no one behind requires us to be deliberate in the way the program has been designed. But I also think that it should be deliberate when you also evaluate, because that's where you sort of see the impact in terms of the audience or the targeted people, if they were really the ones that you were trying to make an impact to. Because sometimes you might have actually have gotten the right results, but you have left them out because the program was designed in such a way that some of these critical people that you needed to make an impact into their lives have now been excluded by the program design. So it means at the evaluation stage, you should be able to pick up that that shortfall and eventually correct the program so that in the next design or next phase, it is able to assist those people that are affected. The other part is also those that might have benefited who were not necessarily supposed to be inside the program. I think you are also able to identify that. The other thing that I think I've seen from the boundary critique is that it enables you to enrich the process, because you get a lot of stakeholders, those that are involved and those that are beneficiaries of the program, to also participate. So it's more like co-creation of the evaluation. So you might have thought of it to a certain level, but if you get the teams that are there in your evaluation reference group to be from those stakeholders, it makes you to sort of look at things in a broader but more collaborative sense, even to the spheres that you haven't actually thought that you might have covered. So in short, I'm saying this is a good framework. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for this complete reflection, Lucas. Yes, and ideas also that you provide to the team and to us. Anybody else? Any thoughts, or maybe if you would like to complement or further develop what Lucas has mentioned? Any other uses that you see to this, or did it make you think or reflect on any aspect that you think should be worth sharing with the team? Saima?
Yes, Jody. Oh, I really learned a lot today. And with this framework, I see that we would really do the things right this time around. And looking at this framework, one can really use it at different stages of the evaluation. I'm thinking of the design is it's somehow synonym to the stakeholder mapping. And it will really inform you of who are the stakeholders that you need to engage in terms of evaluating your programs. And it answers to the issue of leave no one behind, making sure that you don't leave anyone behind, whether it's beneficiaries, it's implementers, and so on. And another critical thing that I saw that it will help us a bit is on the unplanned circumstances, the issue of COVID, the issue of crises like other droughts and so on. The moment those things were not planned, and if you do this critical inquiry, you use this framework, it will be able for you to pick up these activities, that interventions that you did which were not planned during the design of the program. And so I would suggest that you use it from design and also during the monitoring of the evaluation, the process, in the middle of the process, as well as at the end of the evaluation, just to make sure that you assess whether everybody was involved and all activities and implementations were captured. So that's my point for now. Thank you. Over to you, Jody.
Yes, very, very interesting. Yes, thanks so much. That's a very good point. So on the design, and then whenever there is emergence and things change in the evaluation, you use the framework and you reassess who is in, who is out. And yeah, that's a very interesting reflection and idea. Anybody else would like to share her or his opinions, thoughts, reactions on the boundary critique? Okay, no one else? So then maybe Joseph, we can continue. One comment, you have more or less, I think, Lucas, between you and Saima, you have mentioned it indirectly, but besides the application that it has with the leave no one behind, you also see that in the framework, one of the sources of influence that you look at is the sources of control, of power. So the boundary critique also guides you through equity. Yeah, somehow it's not a full-fledged analysis of equity, but now you are more and more pushed to do equity evaluations or to consider equity in evaluations. Yeah, for example, UNICEF has a full manual on how to apply equity in every single step of an evaluation, and it's very comprehensive. But maybe if you want to consider equity, even if it's not much in depth and throughout, but make sure that equity considerations are put in place, the boundary critique is also a very good starting point. So, you know, you do the boundary critique and you have aspects having to do with the purpose, the legitimacy of the evaluation, leave no one behind, and then also equity. And that could be a good start then in order to further deepen into those aspects. But the boundary critique done in the design can also help you with that. Okay, so now let's move on to the third block of the presentation today. We've seen aspects of leadership and in emergence, the leading role of evaluation managers and the evaluation teams when we are conducting adaptive evaluation. Then the boundary critique, and as you have already probably sensed, the boundary critique needs a leadership role. It's a tool that needs the empowerment, and the proactiveness of somebody saying, okay, now we're going to ask those questions. As you know, traditional evaluation, it's very much focused on the contractor, on the process. So we've got the terms of reference. This is what we have. Let's start with the inception phase. And the boundary critique happens in a reflection process prior to the inception phase. It is what Joseph before referred to as a scoping. You can call it a scoping, pre-design, but it's all this moment before the evaluation. In order to come up with a good evaluation design, there are a number of very powerful and critical aspects and questions that we should ask ourselves. So boundary critique in adaptive evaluations, boundary critique, it's very necessary. Why? Because the evaluation moves. There is emergence. Then suddenly things change, and you have to make sure that there is a guarantee that that change in the evaluation, that you assess who is left out now or who is back in, or so you have to do that. But in a normal, traditional, business as usual type of evaluation, you can also apply, of course, boundary critique. Now, adaptive evaluations that we have seen are evaluations in we are proactive, in we are reactive, and we are interactive in order to be adaptive, right? This is the attitude, this is the mindset. So in order to be interactive, we need to relate with other actors, and not only right at the beginning to design and right at the end to present evaluation findings, but throughout all the time. And that means that both the role of the evaluation manager, above all, and also even the external evaluators become more of a facilitation role. And actually the way Joseph and we see it is that in adaptive evaluation, your role, the role of the evaluation manager, becomes very much so a role of a facilitator. Yeah, bringing in evaluators with the data, a particular point in time, in order to do the feedback loops. Whenever there are changes and emergency and things emerge in the evaluation, you might have to adapt, and that might mean bringing people in, talk, discuss, make informed calls, relate to people. It's a very engaging, intense process, and for that you need facilitation. There is a manual, a book, actually written by Michael Quinn-Patton, again, is one of the evaluators that has been working for more years in adaptive evaluations, and he has a wealth of knowledge and practice written in books produced, and he's got this facilitating evaluation. Yeah, it's a relatively small book, but Joseph and I both find it very, very interesting. It's based on practice. It's not theoretical at all. It talks about the role of the evaluation managers and evaluators in facilitating evaluations when they become adaptive. So actually, evaluation facilitation is a niche in the world of facilitation. You might do a facilitation process when you design an intervention, when you implement an intervention. Evaluation facilitation is a particular type of facilitation that we do in evaluation. Okay, so it adapts general facilitation knowledge to the particular issues and challenges that you find working with the stakeholders involved in a program evaluation. That is what facilitation in evaluation or facilitating evaluation is how you facilitate the evaluation process. Okay, so here very, very quickly, what is facilitation then in this specific niche of evaluations? It is about bringing people together. Yeah, we could summarize it on, and we really think that this sentence is a very short one, easy to remember, and it encapsulates all the meaning that we want to convey to you, is that it's helping people to talk. That is what facilitation in evaluation means. You know, when you do a boundary critique, when you bring stakeholders into a table, when you consult them on the outcomes, when you are designing, facilitation is making sure that their ideas, their needs, their intended uses for the evaluation are expressed. So it's not only putting in place the spaces for people to come in and listen to you, but facilitation is about making them talk. So it's about creating a sphere, a space, and in which people feel free and confident in order to express their views and to talk. Otherwise, it's impossible to answer many of the questions of adaptive evaluation, including the boundary critique, if people are not feel free to talk. So actually, the idea is that in adaptive, well, this can be applied in all evaluations. We could facilitate much more in a typical summative evaluation for a country program evaluation. We could do that. But in adaptive evaluations, given the complex nature of the interventions we're evaluating and the fact that we want to incorporate emergence, we need to know what people think and how their thinking evolves throughout the evaluation. So we have people provide wisdom, and we need to be good enough to harbor that wisdom. When we do, for example, a feedback loop, we talked about feedback loops in the first session. In PIL number 1, in user engagement, we showed you that technique, feedback loops, which is basically shorter periods for collecting data, analyzing, and then presenting that data to the key users of the evaluation. Rather than just doing one loop of collecting data, presenting the final results at the end, feedback loops are shorter processes in which you collect not all the data, just part of the data, you process it, and you put it on the table to start discussing with the stakeholders that have to make decisions on that throughout the evaluation. And here, these processes, feedback loops, are not just you present the findings and that's it, and you get some input. It's a conversation, and it's a conversation on what those findings mean to those present in that room. What are the implications for them? What it changes for them, and what actions will they take? And do they lack information in order to take those actions that the evaluation could provide further? And so there is a dialogue. Facilitation in evaluation is helping people to talk and engage in a dialogue so you can make sure that the evaluation will be useful for them. So of course, facilitation has a very strong human component, okay? Some people have that skill, that ability to deal with people, some others don't, but it's a skill that can be acquired, absolutely. We can learn how to facilitate. That's an important, very important part. So in short, on why is facilitation important in adaptive evaluation, is because the idea is to enhance the relevance, credibility, meaningfulness, and utility of evaluations. And in order to enhance that, you have to be interactive with the users. You have to be interacting with them all the time. If you just interact right at the beginning and the end, and during the process, many things change and happen, the evaluation is less credible or might be less meaningful to them. You might be providing data on decisions that they have already made. Then data comes late, the information, the findings come late. We already made that decision. This just corroborates the decision that we made. That makes the evaluation less relevant and meaningful. So this facilitation helps enhancing relevance, credibility, and meaningfulness in adaptive evaluations, okay? This is taken from, so this is a number of, now we will put a number of slides in which we try to summarize the facilitating evaluation book without having you to read the whole book or to buy it, yeah? And this is a number of infographics and vignettes that we found that talked about facilitating evaluation. Joseph, I will now hand over to you so you can enlighten us with the Brittle Star.
Okay, thank you, Jordi. So as you can see, there are 5 very important principles. Michael Quinn-Patton has another book, Jordi, which is called Principles Focused Evaluation. Well, with Jordi and I, we still even don't know how Michael writes so many books, and they are so rich. We hope one day we can know about his secret. But one of the particular things he emphasizes, and this is something we have experienced with Jordi a lot, is that in adaptive evaluation, we use principles a lot because principles, they can be adapted to any context. They are not just norms that we have to follow because we have to follow a norm, but we can adapt those principles to our particular sociocultural, economic, and environmental context. So there are 5 principles. One is the personal factor, then is engaging through options. The other one is embedding an evaluative thinking throughout the process of evaluation. The 4th one is facilitating at the leading edge. And the 5th one is observe, interpret, and adapt. And now we are going to double click on each of the principles. So the first one is actually be guided by the personal factor. And this is very easy to say, but sometimes not so straightforward, because sometimes we are so much, we conduct our evaluations a lot by the book. So we focus a lot the process, the steps, the phases we have to follow. And sometimes we forget about the personal factor. So, and this is the most important one in facilitation. It looks like counterintuitive, but experiencing, letting the stakeholders, people involved in the evaluation, experience you as a person, not as someone filling a role. This is fundamental. And when we facilitate, we get in touch with people. So it's a people gathering where we may collect data, learn from them. So before doing that, it's important we foster a sense of connection. So we foster connection among the participants of that gathering, and we learn about the people that we will be facilitating. So for example, we can even call them in advance. We can also send them some preparatory materials. We can share what we are gonna do so that we build a sense of trust already. So learning from, from them at the very beginning, that really helps building trust with them. And when people trust each other, they feel safe, then they will be also more open to share their own experiences, their own opinions, and so on. So this is a fundamental factor. So the quality of the data we normally get from facilitating, feedback loops, for example, highly depends on our ability to foster, that sense of safety and trust between the people we will be facilitating. So as Michael Patton puts it, he says that that's the single most important determinant of what impact the evaluation has. So as we engage with so many and different stakeholders, the personal factor actually is the bedrocks of the other processes that follow.
Yes, the second star would be engage. So it's about engaging with options rather than engaging with only the data. And this is a very important in adaptive evaluation, such as real-time evaluation and developmental evaluation, even outcome harvesting. The important thing here, and it can maybe summarized in this, what we have highlighted in the red circle, is that when you facilitate as an evaluator, because adaptive evaluations are part of adaptive management, and the idea is to provide input to decisions that have to be made. You do not only provide data and you leave, like in a summative evaluation. In an adaptive evaluation, you provide options. Yeah? You provide options. So you provide the data in different options. Maybe you can use scenarios. So in the facilitation, what you do in the process is to facilitate that a decision is made, or that the different options that those people, the users of the evaluation, have to make in their decision-making process, that they are clear about the choices that they have. They might make the decision there, or they might make it later on. That has to do with their decision making processes. But what the facilitating evaluator does is, rather than giving a recommendation, it's providing the different options on the floor. Actually, Michael Quinn-Patton gets inspired. Of course, he got inspired through developmental evaluation and the type of evaluations that he does, in which evaluation is embedded into the process of implementing programs, and he provides feedback all the time. So here the important thing is not about just, here is the data, this is our recommendation, is we have these different pieces of data, some of them even might be contradictory, what that mean to you, and then the users in the reply to that. And it's a process of generating these different options, comparing them, and you facilitate the process rather than the evaluator giving a recommendation. Facilitates the process. This is an important part of facilitating evaluations. Joseph, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jordi. The third principle is observe, interpret, and adapt. And here the main point is that any experience and interaction with any fact or event is data all the time. So how we observe those experiences, that are the basis of data to emerge, how we interpret, no, how we make sense of them. It's actually the main basis through which we make decisions, and therefore we adapt and we may adjust, you know, evaluations along the way. So that's an important point of that principle, and so a facilitator needs actually to put a lot of attention on observation, you know. So and there are ways we can learn to develop that that ability, and to foster a space where data can be discussed and can be interpreted. So that's what we do when we set up feedback loops, for example, so that we extract this knowledge that is the basis for adaptation. So it's like a little bit like an alchemist that turns data into knowledge. So that's the basis for decision making and adaptation. And for doing that, the experience itself is very important. It's the foundation of any later on data collection process, but we need spaces where we can reflect on that experience so that we make sense of that experience and data can emerge in a meaningful way. And for that, you can see here in a circle in red, 3 questions that are the basis of the adaptive moment that Jordi introduced earlier. So in an evaluation, we do a lot the what, no? What evidence do we have? We collect data, okay. But once we have that evidence, we need to ask, and that's the second question, which is sometimes the one which is more difficult to implement, and because we need facilitation for that, which is the so what. So now that we have this data collected, so what? What does it mean to us? How do we interpret? How do we make sense of that data? So we analyze the implications of the evidence we provide. And then the third one is the adaptive question, is now with this data and those implications that we have analyzed, now what? Now, what do we do? No? And here leads, that decision-making leads to action. Shall we adjust the program as we go? Shall we adjust the evaluation questions because we see that our questions that we had are becoming less relevant and new things have emerged, so that we need to incorporate new evaluation questions in the inquiry framework. So this is actually a very, with Jordi and Valeria, we very much like this framework because it's simple, but it's powerful at the same time. Jordi, next to you.
Yes, the fourth one, and we will see this in more depth in the last pill number 6, which is about the adaptive mindset. In the next pill, we will go 100% into adaptive mindset. And one of the key cornerstones of an adaptive mindset is evaluative thinking. And here the principle is apply, when you facilitate in evaluation, apply evaluative thinking throughout. We will go into what evaluative thinking is, but it's the thinking that embeds and permeates evaluation. It's inquiring. It's being a critical thinker. What is happening? Why is this happening? How is this happening? What if this doesn't happen? What are the implications? What should we do about it? All these questions embed evaluative thinking. What evidence do we have? How does this conclusion is based on evidence? You know, all the rigor of an evaluation have a lot to do with this evaluative thinking. Yeah, this is the inferential thinking. Is how do you reason the link between the pieces of evidence that you gather and your conclusion, your final determination. This is evaluative thinking. We will see. Evaluative thinking has many different types of thinkings incorporated: critical thinking, creative thinking as well. What if is the typical creative thinking question. Inferential thinking, how can you infer a conclusion based on evidence that you see? These are the implications. That so what, a question that Joseph introduced before, and also practical thinking. Practical thinking is, okay, what does that mean to me as a decision maker? Okay, evaluator, you come with all these evidence and these conclusions. What does that mean to me? Helping the decision makers to answer that question. That's also part of the facilitating evaluation, and it has to do with evaluative thinking. So in the next session, we will see those elements much more in detail. And then there is a final one, the final principle, which is the facilitate to the leading edge. And this has to do with making sure that those engaged in the process, they also learn for them. That it's a pleasant purpose, so that they feel that you are giving them knowledge, that you are giving them insights, and that helps bringing an engagement. So it's not that you call them and they have to come to this steering committee or this feedback loop because they've been called in order to help you with your evaluation. Is the other way around, is that you provide them with insights that might be very interesting with them. And leading edge, that means, for example, tell them, connect them with the latest developments that have happened in evaluation, or important research findings in the area you're discussing, or breaking news. That makes that engagement happen. Actually, I remember, Joseph, when we did the developmental evaluation, that we wanted to engage a lot of business units in New York, and then later on, of course, country offices, and there was a lot of it was quite burdensome for them because we were calling them for feedback loops quite often. And one of the things that we did, actually, Michael Quinn-Patton was there with us, giving us this advice, was presenting things that were state of the art. You see, so like USID is doing this. They're the only ones doing this. Adaptive management. You remember Joseph Charles Katenge. He was a bit, hoping for a normal evaluation. That we started providing new research, breaking news, new latest developments on adaptive management. He got so interested that he even went to Washington to a workshop for USID because he wanted to see himself how others were doing adaptive management. This is leading edge. You engage those in the evaluation, not just as informants, but as part of it, so they can experience this whole process. Then this is co-creation. And the co-creation is not just, what do you think about this? I think this, and then you incorporate it into the process. That is your process. It's making them experience the whole process of evaluation. And this would be what the leading edge is. Joseph, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So how to apply facilitation in evaluation? Luckily, there are some methods and tools in the Compass. We have picked here 5 of them. Please, you can go there and check because you will see the tools. They are very rich. You have templates where you can apply right away. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always let us know. So the first one is psychological safety. To Jordi and I, that's fundamental. To us, there can't be any facilitation unless there is safety in the room. If people don't feel safe, they will not open up. And to us, we have experienced that in many occasions. The second is the 6 thinking hats, which is a very interesting tool for structuring thinking. So when you may find different people speaking from different, not only perspective, but from different thinking modes. For example, if you have people in the room that are very critical, that they only see, the negative side of all things, and then you have other people that want to bring, positive thinking, creative thinking, you may use the 6 thinking cards. So you structure the type of thinking, and the whole process can actually be developed smoothly. The iceberg model is actually a tool that you can use to facilitate a root cause analysis of an event, of some data, that is quite complex and you want to unpack. Theory U is actually a design process that is used actually, from sensing from a personal perspective what is working and what is not, and trying to link that with co-creation processes in a team. And the sense-making tool, it's also a tool that actually allows teams, to get to discuss and meaningful ways to engage with data, a portfolio of programs and activities. So by analyzing what makes sense for the organization, for the team in that particular regard, may also lead to important decision-making processes. So those would be 5 tools that are available at the Compass right away. Jordi, over to you.
Yes, well, and actually, yeah, this is mostly for today. We've gone through these 3 blocks and open up this part more on the software side of adaptive evaluation rather than methods, tools, and procedures. So yeah, feel free to share any opinions that you have now, also on the facilitation part of evaluation, additional resources that you might need, any opinion or question that you might have. We will now put in the chat the quick survey that we put every time that we do this. Actually, if I put the link, Joseph, then the presentation will leave. So maybe Valeria, do you have the Survey Monkey link so I can keep the presentation on? Otherwise, we will.
Let me get it.
Okay. Yes. So this quick survey, this is very useful to us in order to know, whether you would type. Actually, here it says strategy testing and outcome harvesting. It should be the tools that we have seen today. So if you could answer this survey, that would be very interesting. So whether you would apply any of the boundary critique, for example, or would you be interested in putting in more facilitation into evaluation processes, so then we can have an idea of what country offices would be interested in piloting these approaches. So then we can prepare for the next phase, which is phase 3, that is about applying those innovative adaptive evaluation tools in your offices. And then Valeria, Joseph, and I can be there accompanying you in the process. As we mentioned at the beginning of this session, we already did a little bit with Myanmar in the apply outcome harvesting, and we were accompanying them at several points through the process, but we can do as well with all the rest of the tools. So now Valeria has put the survey in the chat. It takes 3 minutes to answer. Most of them are like multiple choice questions. So if you can reply to that survey, that would be perfect. And maybe Valeria, if you would like to explain a bit, what is next about the guidance, and then the next session, and what can we expect on the way forward?
Yeah, so there's like I said, one more session, PIL 6, coming up I will send an email with a date, and then we are working on well, if you want to move to the next slide. Yeah. On the adaptive evaluation mindset, the adaptive evaluations mindset, including evaluative thinking and evaluability assessment. So that will be very interesting. And then we are working on a guide that would be very practical and useful if you want to read it. And then, as I mentioned before, if any of the country offices would like to try out any of these approaches, we can support while you're undertaking these exercises. That is what we see coming up in 2023 and 2024. There will also be, so that would be the coaching and technical assistance. And then we also are planning for adaptive monitoring modules for this year coming up. Well, that's basically it. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. No questions or any comment? Jordi and Joseph, you have anything else?
Maybe to add that the guidance, the idea is that it's a very practical one. The idea is we're working on a map where you have all these tools that we have been presenting in the different adaptive fields are all there. And in a very graphic or infographic way, you will be able to identify which ones you need in which situation. So it will be very, very practical and based on problems. So this tool will help you solving this type of challenge. This tool can help you solving this other type of challenge. So the idea is that it's incredibly practical, and then there will be a link to a summary of all these materials that we've been providing. That's what we are working on at the moment. Yeah. Joseph, maybe?
Yeah, no, thank you. Just adding that we know that that's a lot of information provided, that's why we We call this kind of sessions pills because it's knowledge concentrated in less than 2 hours. So please, also give you some time to digest all this and try to see what's useful, what's applicable to your own context, to the evaluations that are actually now going on in your own country and regional offices. And then feel free if you have any doubt or question also to let us know. And thank you so much for attending.